You gotta have knowledge for life. You gotta have knowledge.
So it was with the white man.
That's right.
When he created slavery in America, he created slavery as a business that he planned on creating a system, a standard operating procedure,
Yes, sir.
a rule, a regulation, a law, a code of doing things that he wouldn't have to be there with the whip no more.
That's right.
He wouldn't have to beat nobody no more.
That's right.
He wouldn't have to do any of the things physical that he used to do, for the slave had a system that they followed that kept his business alive while he was out on vacation.
Yes, sir.
While he was walking his wife on the beach, the slaves would still be laboring.
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So when the white man hired Willie Lynch, he came in the year of 1712.
Yes, sir.
And he delivered this speech that came as the Constitution for the standard operating procedure of controlling Negroes in America.
Yes, sir.
Y'all right?
Yes, sir.
They figured out a plan to put black people on autopilot.
That's right. Yes, sir.
They figured out a way to develop a frequency programming in the mind of black people that they wouldn't have to be there to move the Negro, but they could just push certain buttons from a remote control.
Come on, man.
And black people today have become remote control slaves.
That's right. Yes, sir.
You all right?
Yes, sir.
Willie Lynch says in 1712, "Gentlemen, I greet you here on the banks of the James River in the year of our Lord 1712. First, I shall thank you, the gentlemen of the colony of Virginia, for bringing me here. I am here to help you solve some of your problems with slaves. Your invitation reached me on my modest plantation in the West Indies, where I have experimented with some of the newest and still the oldest methods for control of slaves. Ancient Rome would envy us if my program is implemented. As our boat sailed south on the James River, named after our illustrious king, whose version of the Bible we cherish." I'm going to rewind that statement. As our boat sailed south on the James River, named for our being who? Our the slave masters.
That's right.
Our the slave traders.
Yes, sir.
Our the slave makers, called the King James version of the Bible, the version of the Bible that we cherish.
Come on now. Come on.
I don't know about you, but what's good for the slave master
Come on with it.
ain't never proved to be so good for the slave.
That's right.
What's good for the top ain't always good for the bottom.
Come on.
Betty Crocker got enough sense to know that.
That's right.
Her goal might be to make a chocolate cake,
Come on.
but depending upon the region that you live in,
That's right.
determines the recipe to produce that same chocolate cake.
That's right. Yes, sir.
If she wants to produce a chocolate cake in New Orleans, the lowest point, the recipe is a little different than it is in Denver, the Mile High City.
That's right.
Why? Because one's the highest point in America,
Come on.
while the other is the lowest point in America.
Come on now.
So the production of a chocolate cake is the goal, but the recipe has to be different.
That's right.
So what's good for the slave master, what's good for the slave maker, is not always good for the slave that needs to be raised up. Why? Because one might be in Denver while the other exists mentally, spiritually, and economically in New Orleans.
Yes, sir.
So if you want to make a chocolate cake out of us, it's got to be a different recipe.
Yes, sir.
He says, "I saw enough to know that your problem is not unique. While Rome used cords of wood as crosses for standing human bodies along its old highways in great numbers, you are here using the tree and rope on occasion. I caught the whiff of a dead slave hanging from a tree a couple of miles back." I want y'all to listen to this. You're not only losing valuable stock by hangings, you are having uprisings. Slaves are running away. Your crops sometimes are left unattended in the field for too long for maximum profit. You suffer occasional fires and your animals are killed. wherein the reason of them coming to teach this methodology that Willie Lynch employed, where was the genuine concern for the health or the well-being of the black man and woman of